Welcome back. I'd like to begin with these words by Dorothy Monroe called The Cost. Death is not too high a price to pay for having lived. Mountains never die, nor do the seas or rocks or endless sky. Through countless centuries of time they stay eternal deathless, yet they never live. If choice were there, I would not hesitate to choose mortality. Whatever fate demanded in return for life I'd give. For never to have seen the fertile plains, nor heard the winds, nor felt the warm sun on sands beside the salty sea, nor touched the hands of those I love. Without these, all the gains of timelessness would not be worth one day of living and loving, come what may. So welcome again, everyone, family and friends and loved ones of Clendon Hendrickson, whose life and passing we come here today to celebrate. We come from all walks of life, young and old, men and women, near and far, brought together by our association with this one person who touched us, affected us, loved us, and finally brought us here today. Now that we have laid his body to rest, we gather again to remember and to celebrate Clen's life, what he meant to each of us. We may have known him as father, husband, friend, grandpa, teacher, or merely acquaintance. Today we gather knowing him in all these ways, but more importantly, today we gather knowing him simply as a warm and caring human being with his impish grin and twinkly eye. We also come here today to grieve the passing of Clen's life. Through our remembering and our reflecting, we are faced with the inevitable end of all living things and our own mortality. We mourn the loss that we have experienced by not having Clen among us today. Clen as a living, breathing, and often laughing person. Indeed, one of his relatives said that when he told stories, he sometimes got to laughing so hard that he couldn't even finish the story. Today, Clen becomes a memory for us, a story for us to tell, a memory that we will carry with us as long as we live. We gather together as a community so that we may share our memories, that they may become more alive and real as we carry them back out into the world and back into our lives. It is fitting that the place that we gather today to celebrate Clen's life is the same sanctuary in which he married his high school classmate, Kay Elliott, on June 1st, 1951. Who could have known on that day 64 years ago what was in store for them? This church building at the time was actually home to the First Congregational Church of Yakima, and only much later to be bought by its current owner, the Unitarian Universalist Church. And you think that this sanctuary has gone through changes? Think of the life of this one man, Clen, whose life was incredibly rich and varied and loving of so many people. We know well that one of Clen's most intense joys was flying through the air. And it might seem now, looking back on it, that his life was one long or short, depending on how you look at it, flight of adventure. We gather today to share our memories of him, and in this sharing, we know that his spirit still lives and always will live. We're going to hear today from some people who knew him well. We're going to start hearing from her about a summary of Clen's life for us.
I've been asked to provide a brief summary of Clenden's life for you today. I'd like to start with words written by Clendon himself to share with his Yakima High School classmates at their 50-year high school reunion. Here's what Clendon said about himself on that occasion. It doesn't surprise me that I got to be 70 years old. What surprises me is how quick I got here. Several things are outstanding in my mind about my high school experiences. Jack Eglin racing down the hill to Fifth Avenue in his classic 36 Ford going off to lunch. Mr. Whitney of chemistry class explaining that if the atom could be split, a tremendous energy would be released. Mrs. Sanders' study hall with the saying under the clock, the way of the aggressor is hard, and there is no rest for the wicked. Another saying comes to mind, but I don't remember where from. For when the final score is placed against your name, it tells not that you won or lost, but how you played the game. After graduation, I spent a year in Puerto Rico with the U.S. Army, where I learned how to smoke cigarettes and that all women were not as nice as the girls I had gone to high school with. After that, I dug myself a hole at junior college and Central Washington College, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. The good part of that experience is that I met and married Kay Elliott, and we have been married 44 years. I spent 5 years surveying for the city of Seattle on their power project on the Skagit River. That area is now part of the North Cascades Highway. During that time, we lived through some severe winters and were blessed with 3 daughters. I finally decided that my basic love lay in aviation, and the best way to pursue that was through education. The advisor at the University of Washington asked me 4 questions. How old are you? 29. Are you married? Yes. How many kids do you have? 3. Do you ride a motorcycle? No. Okay, you'll make it. 4 lean years later, I graduated summa cum laude, thank the Lord, with a BS in aeronautical engineering. By that time, we had added a son to our family. I then spent a career flight testing airplanes at the Air Force Flight Center, Edwards Air Force Base in California, and enjoyed it immensely. During that time, I obtained an MS in Systems Management from USC, became a member of the Mach 2 Club for flying in quick airplanes, got a private pilot's license, and remodeled the house. Our children all got married, we lost our parents, and became grandparents. I lost my hair, quit smoking, and learned to appreciate music. My hobbies include skiing and boating. We have a motorhome and do some traveling, primarily in the Western Canada. Our youngest daughter is living in New Zealand, and our other 3 are living in the Western U.S. Altogether, we have 5 grandchildren. As George Burns says, you know you're getting old when you bend down to tie your shoes and wonder what else you can do as long as you're down. Have fun, and I'll see you at the turn of the century. Those were Clendon's words on that day. Since that high school reunion, Kay and Clem added another 20 years to their marriage for a total of 64 years. Clendon's retirement was filled with a host of other activities, frequent trips to New Zealand to visit Donna and Tom and their children, summer motorhome trips through California, Oregon, and Washington with their grandson, Stephen, boating trips with family, including a houseboat trip on Lake Mead and a sailing expedition on the Puget Sound, cruises to Alaska and through the Panama Canal, many birding and photography trips with Kay, developing a rich relationship as an adopted grandfather for Karen and Alex Chin, and many summer trips with family to Lake Silan and Stehekin, one of Kay and Clem's favorite spots. Speaking for myself, I had the privilege of knowing Clendon since I first met Pauline in 1978, and despite the difference in our heights, he was someone I always looked up to. I think we can all agree that not only did he win at everything important in life, there was no one who played a better and truer game. Thank you.
Thank you, Herb. We're going to hear some personal tributes now, and first from his daughter, Donna, all the way from New Zealand, through a recorded message.
Hello everybody, this is Donna K. Chambers from New Zealand. And the day that Dad died, I felt inspired to adapt a poem that was sent to me from a friend when our dog Dan died 6 days before Dad. And Dad had such a loving connection with our dog Dan, and Dad always made sure that Dan had a rubber chicken to chase and to play with, and so I adapted the poem in loving memory of my dad, Clint Hendrickson. Just this side of heaven is a place called the Rainbow Bridge. When an animal dies that has been especially close to someone here, that pet goes across the Rainbow Bridge. Across that bridge are meadows and hills for all our special animal friends so they can run and play together. There's plenty of food and water and sunshine, and our little friends are warm and comfortable. All the animals who had been ill and old are restored to health and vigor. Those who were hurt or maimed are now whole and strong again. Just as we remember them in our thoughts of the days and times gone by. The animals are happy and content there, except for one small thing. They each miss the special person, the special people that they left behind, the ones who looked after them, the ones who took time to have fun with them, care for them, and showed them love. All the animals run and play together, but the day comes when one of them suddenly stops and looks into the distance towards the bridge. His bright eyes are intent, his eager body quivers with joy and excitement. You have been spotted. Suddenly, Danny begins to run from the group, racing over the green grass, his legs carrying him faster and faster, with barks and sounds of joy. He has seen the rubber chicken. The rubber chicken in your hand, Dad. His favorite toy. It is a joyous reunion. Again, you pat that lovely head. Even Moggy the cat is there. She's so pleased to see you. Next to her lays a poplar tree branch, ready to play chase, as you did so many times. Then you cross the rainbow bridge together, looking for sticks to play chase. Chase with, just like you did so many times on the beach. But now it's even better, exceeding abundantly better than you'd ever thought or wished. Because across the rainbow bridge are all those familiar faces of family and friends, all those who have gone before you. They are there to welcome you home, saying, "Well done, Clem. You have left the earth a better place because you were in it and you did your best to love." Thanks, Dad, for all the ways that you showed us all that you cared. Give Danny Dog a hug from us. He only got there 6 days before you. The place where there's no time, no stress, and no worries, no pain, only peace and contentment. Enjoy every heavenly moment. I know that you are always with us even now, wanting only peace, health, and happiness for us all as we continue this earthly journey until we also cross the rainbow bridge of love and see your smiling face, and then we will laugh together again. I'm going to find a California redwood tree, Dad, to plant on our new land, and I'm going to name it CL, just for you. So every time I look at it, I'll be reminded of you and all those things that you did to help us in all our many projects and adventures. You were always so generous towards us, and the way you laughed that made everyone else laugh with you. Thanks for passing that on to me. I love you, Dad, and I know that you love me too. Enjoy your new journey. You made it home. You crossed the finish line. You won the race.
Hello everybody, this is Isaac, the son of Donna and Tom, and I just thought I'd tell you a little story of one of my memories of Clendon. I was thinking today about something memorable that had happened between me and Granddad, and I realized that my first memory of existence is Clen, and it was when I was 2 years old, and I just moved from New Zealand, and my first memory of existence is being over the fence at the house in Quartz Hill, and I was walking around by where the motorhome was, and I remember my first ever memory is I stood on a rusty nail, and I remember looking down on my little foot and seeing it poking through, all the way through my foot, and I instantly knew that I wasn't supposed to be there. Brandon had told me, don't play over the fence because there's nails. And I remember my next memory is screaming and being dragged up the stairs by Clint. And the whole time he carried me up, I was kicking and screaming and yelling, not the red stuff, not Quincy. And dragged me all the way to the top and into the little bathroom and opened the medical cabinet and poured methylate. And that is my first memory of life. To say thanks to Granddad for allowing me to exist and to be here. And I'll miss him.
Hey, it's Sharon. I'm the granddaughter of Clint. I just realized now that I only ever met him actually a handful of times, and they were usually when I was really young. But I just have, if I could summarize my memories of him, it would be remembering him even as a child, just like laughing so hard when he told a story, and even though half the time I didn't know what the joke of the story was about, I just remember laughing as well, and seeing his face go so red and tears streaming down his face. And I remember when I got to see him again when I went to the States last year, he told a story and he started the exact same laughter, just like I remembered, and it was so nice to see him. I think if there's any way that you can have a summary of memories about someone, them laughing is definitely probably the best ones.
We're going to hear another tribute now from Glenn's granddaughter, Jessica, a fitting musical tribute. I think the song What a Wonderful World, a song that I think is appropriate for ending.
Hi everyone, I'm the other child from all the people you just heard. That doesn't make sense. I'm the second daughter of Donna and Tom. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see the moon for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow, they'll learn much more than I'll ever know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yeah, I think to myself, what a wonderful
We have a few more prepared remarks, personal tributes from Stephen, his grandson.
One of, or perhaps the singular peculiar thing about being a child is that almost the entirety of your young life is taken in without any context whatsoever. It's only in later reflection that the daily events of your life are noted as special and worth treasuring. I didn't then know how lucky I was to spend weeks every summer visiting my grandparents. We would spend time watching westerns and eating ice cream at their house in Quartz Hill, swimming in their pool. I even occasionally and begrudgingly helped with chores. We would also travel up and down the California coast in their motorhome. And even then I knew it was great fun to ride shotgun next to Granddad at the front of that big RV. Granddad did his best to instill in me a love of fishing. You might have seen a photo go through the slideshow of that. But I greatly preferred sleeping to those early morning trips to the creek next to the campsite. And it was not uncommon for Grandma to resort to throwing things from their bed to rise my sleeping form, to get me up and out the door to join Granddad well after I had promised him that I was ready to go and I'd be outside in just one more second. We played chess and checkers. I read a great number of books on those visits, and Grandmother spent a great deal of energy telling me to put my book down and look outside the window at the beautiful scenery that we were driving through. And we had a wonderful time. These are all memories that I'll cherish forever, and I wish that we had more time, that we could do all those things again. But he's gone now, and all we have, all each of us has, are the memories we made with him while he was alive. When I think about Granddad, much like Sharon said, what sticks with me is not the activities that we shared together or the trips that we took, but his laugh. He was a generous and enthusiastic laugher, and he was lucky that his laughter was contagious too, because there were many times that he could not finish a story or a joke because he cracked himself up too much to continue speaking. At that point, the punchline didn't matter, because everyone had joined in laughing well before he got there. I think it's natural to try and define a person when they're taken from us. When I think about Granddad, it's not what he did or even the things we did together that define him, but the joy that he took in his family. The way he loved swapping stories, the obvious pleasure he took in hearing about his children's and grandchildren's lives, and in sharing some small pieces of it. To me, we're defined by the people we believe in, the people we love, and the people who love us. Granddad loved his wife, his children, his family, and he loved me. I will love him and miss him, and remember him for the man he was, a man with a contagious laugh, who was most alive when surrounded by those he loved. Thank you.
Alex and Karen.
My name's Alex, and this is my sister Karen. And though we didn't have any official prepared remarks, but I just wanted to reflect on some of the wonderful memories we had in Clan growing up. So at a pretty young age, we both lost our dad at a fairly young age, and we didn't really have any grandfather or grandparent figures in our family. And pretty much at a young, crucial time in our life, Clan and Kay stepped in as pretty much our adopted grandparents. And taught us so many life lessons that I'm so grateful and thankful of knowing and learning from him and Kay as well. He was the person who taught me how to ride a bike, first taught me how to swim. Really, the first people, I guess, other than my dad when I was young enough to remember, to get me interested in engineering. And for that, I think he sowed the seeds for where I am today, becoming an aerospace engineer, kind of following in Clint's footsteps, working at Edwards Air Force Base. And it's been such an honor to know him and to guide me through all these years. He's been through all my graduations, elementary, middle middle, high school, and college. He's been through all my piano recitals. He's been, every major part of my life has been there, and I'm so thankful. And I learned so many things. And I just want to share one story that I remember that it's been a really big life lesson. And Stephen might remember this when we were like kids playing around at their house. It might have been a coin that we like dropped in some gutter, some heat air conditioning unit, and we were looking down trying to get the coin back, but there was like a spider inside of there. So we're not doing this. We like tried the chopsticks or tape out of there, and Clan was walking by saying, "What the heck are you guys doing?" Spending like minutes like trying to figure this out. He just put his hand there, grabbed the coin, and said, "Here you go." we were shocked. He just did what? And from that, I learned the life lesson of sometimes you just got to do it. It may not be pleasant, and you get through the fear of everything. So it's been such an honor, and I'm so grateful and thankful to have had him in my life, and he will be dearly missed. I will forever miss his very firm handshake. He always gave the firmest handshake. I was always so impressed at how he did that. I'm going to miss him, Glenn.
So just to add on to what my brother said, yeah, so, we both lost our dad at a very young age. So he really stepped in as just that wonderful father figure for both of us. And one year I decided to do the debutante in the Antelope Valley. And so, everyone had their fathers, dance with them and be their partners and I guess do that sort of coming out thing. And so, obviously I didn't have my dad around for that, so Glenn stepped in to do that for me on my behalf. And so, my fondest memories is learning how to dance with him. And I think he was a lot smoother on the dance floor than I was. But he really did such a wonderful job in being that figure for me when I lost my dad at such a young age. So he just stepped in and did such a wonderful job in that, and also teaching both my brother and I how to ride a bike. And my first memory of that, and he was so patient with me, was I remember I was on the bike and he was behind me doing, what dads do, and they hold on to you and then they let go at that one moment so that way to see, okay, can you make it? And well, I did, and then I ended up crashing into a truck in the parking lot and then pulling over, and he did kind of freak out a little bit. He's like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm fine. Is the car okay?" So that's definitely one of the funnest memories I've had of Glenn. And so, both my brother and I have just felt so adopted by the Hendrickson family. I mean, Kay has adopted definitely us as her grandchildren, and doing photography and learning all that through her has been absolutely wonderful. And just getting to be part of just the Hendrickson family has been absolutely wonderful for me, and I will miss Glenn tremendously. And everyone's right, he has such an infectious laugh. Like whenever he tries to tell stories and he starts laughing, at that point the punchline doesn't matter because you're just already laughing with him. So he will be dearly, dearly missed. But he will live on always in the memories that I have of him. So thank you.
Thank you. As I said earlier, we come here to share our stories and our memories, and so I'm going to invite now, we have a few more minutes, any other people who want to step forward and maybe share a thought or two or a memory, and I can have a microphone I'll bring by, and so if it's easier, bring it by here.
Can't hide my notes on my phone that way, but that's all right. I'm Glenn and Kay's niece, Charlie, and our dad is Oracle, Glenn's brother. And it was apparent to me and all my siblings that Dad and Glenn were very close. In fact, some even thought they were twins. Rod said OJ wanted his dad's look-alike It's been noted that Brad, our brother Brad, and Rod look an awfully lot alike. We particularly remember the many trips to Lancaster and Disneyland in our early years, and wonderful ski trips in Park City later on. On the drive up here from Portland, Dad started telling us stories about Glenn, and he had that laugh, and his face turned bright red, his bald head turned bright red, and he couldn't finish the punchline. What Dad told us is in a big farm family back in the day, there was an unwritten order that the older siblings are responsible for the one under them. Dad was responsible for Glenn, Don for Marv, Marv for Orv, and all, including Helen, were responsible for the youngest, Ted. Don and George and Viola were responsible for Helen. Dad remembers when the boys were wrestling and Clint broke his arm when he was about 12 years old. When the cast came off about 6 weeks later, Dad and a bunch of friends went down to the Yakima swimming pool. Dad was on the diving board. Dad said it was a high dive 50 feet in the air, but we took that down to about 10 feet in the air. Yeah, the orb factor. Dad said he heard Clint screaming, and a kid had Clint's freshly repaired arm behind his back. Dad said he took 3 steps down off that 50-foot high dive ladder and knocked the guy over and nearly chased him in the pool until Marv pulled him off. That gives you the sense of responsibility the boys have for one another. One last story here. He said Uncle Clint and the boys hunted in Idaho all through their youth and hunted together in their adult life for 30 years. Clint liked to hunt for elk the most. He bought a great big rifle from Uncle Roy, George's brother. It was a .308 Magnum. Every time he fired it, it almost threw him over. And those were the exact words Dad used. The boys were waiting by the truck on a hunt, and all of a sudden a herd of elk jumped a very tall fence right in front of Clint. Each time he shot, he yelled, 1, 2, 3, 4. They only had 5 tags, so he thought he better stop shooting and save one for the rest of the boys. There are many stories of the family from Felt, Idaho, and we hope they will continue for generations. I leave you with our favorite greeting from Uncle Clan. Hey!
I'm Celia. I'm Don's daughter, Clan's oldest brother. I am so fortunate to be born into such a strong family of men that set good role models for my generation, for my children's generation, for my grandchildren's generation. They've set the bar so high on how to be a gentleman, a man, a human. And I'm so lucky to see so many of my cousins here, my brother and my sister. And I was going to say, hey, Charlie. But the way my father talked about his brothers, and the times that all the brothers were together, and all the stories about chopping down a tree on top of Orv's head and having Clint chase the ball until he got tired of doing it. So they wiggled the posts and drug him around because Grandma said, don't untie yourself. And I mean, all night long I've been thinking of these stories that we've heard forever, but just starting when we were babies and haven't quit yet. We'll miss Uncle Clint very much, but right now there is a party in heaven. And Aunt Helen's there, and Dad's there, and Marvin's there, and Clint's there, and they said, what took you so long? And we'll miss him. This is great to hear what you all are saying, and I've, been thinking about my dad a lot, and the strong handshake, and, up till he couldn't anymore, he was, gripping my hand and giving strong hugs, and, everything I've heard today about him just is right on. And what I'm keeping, the last few days about him is just like laugh a lot, make time to play with kids and pets, and, just enjoy your stories so much that you can't complete them.
Now, Roderick is going to share a tribute.
We all have so much time. Eventually, your number's up, and I thought I'd share, some of my perspective on Dad, and I have a fairly unique one. I think he was going to continue to have Mom have babies until he finally got a guy. She must have breathed a sigh of relief when it was finally a boy. But to think of what those two did to get to where they got. Going to college, aeronautical engineering degree, raising 4 kids, working full-time. Does anybody do that? That's an accomplishment that I always used that as motivation when I was going to school, just supporting myself, going, this can't be, this is nothing compared to what Dad did to get where he got. He decided aviation was where he was going to go, and as you all probably know, got an aeronautical engineering degree at the University of Washington, and packed the kids in a convertible Cadillac, 4 kids, all your possessions in one car. I can't get myself and my possessions in one car with a trailer following me, so these were lean times, living in government housing, raising 4 kids. It's amazing. And he got a job at Edwards Air Force Base and dropped in there in 1960, which is about 12 years after Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier at the same place. You can imagine him at 32, walking into this place that had to be just the mecca for a flight test engineer, and that's where it was. And he was rubbing elbows with these Chuck Yeager and these World War II aces, and they were there testing airplanes because it was the middle of the Cold War, and it was on, like, to coin a phrase, like Donkey Kong. It was like us or those communists, and their red bastards are going to get us if we don't do this. And it was as serious as a heart attack, and he used to take me out there. I thought I'd share one example of what happened to me as like 8, 9-year-old kid. He took me out for the test day of one airplane called the B-58 Hustler. And this thing is, imagine like an Airstream trailer that's polished aluminum, right? Except it's 30 feet tall and 100 feet long and 60 feet wide, and has 4 of what I've learned through the years, the J79 afterburning turbofan engines, 4 of them on the wings, and he was out there that day to test this thing as if it was going to land on a rainy runway. So he took me with him, bless his heart. I was about that tall, and the first thing I remember is 4 giant fire engines pouring water down on this runway. It was a 5-mile long runway, the longest one in the world. And I watched these fire engines water this runway down, and then he took me out there in an Air Force car, and I had to put my feet on the G meter on the floorboards, the shotgun side, while we raced down the runway, slammed on the brakes, and spun this car around to see how much traction was left. So the little gauge went around, and he said, that'll work, let's go to the tower, and we ran to the tower. Climbed up these stairs, he put me up on a stool, and he yelled we radioed the pilots and said, go, and they launched this thing down the runway. And I'm watching it through binoculars. We started about 3 miles away. They got this thing up to 200 miles an hour, which is landing speed, and then hit this pile of water, jammed on the brakes. So the plane goes skidding to a stop. The brakes got so hot that the tires caught on fire. The fire engines ran out, squirted water on it, the brakes exploded, the parts went through the wings, the fuel dumped on hot, the brakes, and the whole thing burst into flames. Now I'm sitting on a stool watching this stuff through the tower, and the pilots both jumped out, crawled out the nose, and hung on the big pole in the front, dropped down to the pavement, and took off running. And I was like, this is what you do? And I remember just thinking, you know what? I got about the coolest dad you'd ever want to see. Imagine me sitting there going, this is like not a bad day's work. I think I can do this. That was one day in life, and I thought, okay, I got a pretty cool dad, right? And then over time, we would talk about pilot-induced oscillations and structural failure and metal fatigue, and we talked aviation constantly and engineering constantly, and it wasn't long before I realized I also had the smartest guy in the room as a dad. And that's in every room I ever went to. And I've been in some big rooms, and I've never seen anybody with as much attention to detail as that guy. And I think a lot of it was his natural tendencies to be that way. He had to be that way to do that job, because anybody makes a mistake and people die. And that's how he spent his entire career, was in that environment. And he was just naturally gifted in that area. And I always thought, Dad, you're taking too much time. You're going too slow. You're being too careful. But that was the environment you lived in. And I thought until I was a teenager that 5 or 10% of your friends died on the job every year, because we went to funerals all the time. And that environment was just laced with, we tried our best and something went wrong and somebody died. And he was on those projects and he was planning those flight patterns, and that was when, that stuff went down. So Dad had a very intense job, but he went after it like that's what he wanted to do, and he did it. He did a great job of it, and I was awful proud of him. So, I wasn't the only person who recognized his abilities. This is a book by a guy who flew this SR-71, which was and still is the fastest and highest flying airplane in the world. And the book was written by a guy named Brian Schul, who flew the plane for years. And I got a copy of this book and contacted a guy who knew Dad, who was also a pilot, was a 4-star general, and was in command of the air base that this plane flew out of in Northern California. And I wrote to him and I said, Bob, would you mind putting a forward in this book for my dad? And he said, not a problem at all. He was working in Washington, D.C. And he wrote, there I was at 80,000 feet plus, flying the SR-71. It was the high point of my aviation career. It was a thrill and an honor. Thank you for all you've done to advance the science of aviation and making it safer. Without you, this would not be possible. So that's the cover. And Alex, I wanted to give this book to you, because I know it inspired you, and you can tell the story. So that's kind of the synopsis, the story of my dad. You've got to think about this family. When Marvin and Ted dedicated their lives to training people and young kids and getting them on with their lives. Don was a builder of skyscrapers. OJ traveled the world building oil refineries and nuclear reactors and Lord knows what. Half of it he can't tell us about. And Dad did this thing in aviation, and if you can find a family that has accomplished more from a 2-bedroom log cabin, I'd like to hear about it, because there was only one Abe Lincoln. There was 5 of these guys, and every one of them is amazingly accomplished. Well, in any case, so I was pretty impressed with my dad, obviously, and the indicators that he did do some amazing things you can see all over the aviation world right now. If you go to the flight test, the school for flight test engineers at Edwards, the NF-104 is on a platform out in front. That's one of the planes that Dad worked on and was a test engineer. You go to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, you see the XB-70 and that B-58 that I watched. They're sitting there. About 10, 15 years ago, I went to the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., and I walked into the aviation version of that. And I walked in 10 feet in the door, and I looked around, and I saw 3 or 4 airplanes that Dad had worked on, and I just got him on the phone right away, and I go, hey, do you know that, this place is full of the things that you did? And he was like, some of that stuff we all know and love, and he passed it off, but I literally stood in the entryway at the Smithsonian Institute and went, you've touched these airplanes here, which the world comes here to see. So, anyway, that's my dad, that's your brother, that's our uncle, and your granddad. Pretty amazing individual. And I'm honored that you all came here to visit with him and show your respects. Thank you. And I volunteered to play this guitar, and I don't know if this is going to work, but I want to give it a shot, so speak kindly of me. How does it? This is what's known as a tough gig. Got sent home from school one day with a shiner on my eye. It's like the moon was against the rules and it didn't matter why. When Dad got home I told that story just like I rehearsed. Then I stood there on my trembling knees waiting for the words. He said, let me tell you a secret about a father's love. A secret that my daddy said was just between us. See, daddies don't just love their children every now and then. It's a love without end, amen. As life goes by, I've known love, I've seen hate. I've seen the top, but I've seen the bottom. No, you can't relate. And when I thought these things in life would surely do me in, I took my daddy's secret, sang it out again. I sing, let me tell you a secret about a father's love. A secret that my daddy said was just between us. You see, daddies don't just love their children every now and then. It's a love without end, amen. Now the time has come for you to see those pearly gates. I know when they see you come, they won't hesitate. Throw those gates open wide and welcome you in. And somewhere from behind those walls, hear these words again. You'll hear, let me tell you a secret about a father's love. Secret that my daddy said was just between us. See, daddies don't just love their children every now and then. It's a love without end, amen. It's a love without end, amen. All right, now, for the first time, and probably the last time in history, I'm going to lighten the mood by extremely intelligent, driven, and he passed as much of that stuff on to me and all of us as he could, and all of the brothers, like we've heard here today. That's a very unique group of individuals. And Helen, too, I won't leave her out. And I tried to learn all I can from a bunch of them, and I thank all of you for sharing with me. OJ, help me, hurt me, made a man out of me, I'd have to say I've had a good love-hate relationship with the whole damn group. And in the end, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think, you know, they've all helped to make me who I am. And I hope they think that's
I was the one in the family just over the plan that he was my responsibility. I need a lot of help out there. The main thing about the plan was that several people commented to me when Ben smiled, it went clear to his eyes. And everybody thought that was just great. But there's, in the hurry to get everything done, a few things was left out that I thought you folks ought to know about the plan. Well, many things. But I was down building the Space Center in Houston, Texas, that you've all seen on TV. And while we were building that, Ben was down in Edwards Air Force Base, California, working with Chuck Yeager. And Glenn always had this idea that he ought to fly the fastest plane in the world. So when F-104 came out, Glenn and the pilot got in the plane and went up, and Glenn told me, he said, we went so high that it was completely dark. Now the sky gets dark at 80,000 feet. Glenn was up, he thought maybe 110,000. And Chuck Yeager had the speed record. Glenn was going to take it away from him. Chuck didn't like that very much. Glenn and this pilot went up in 110,000 feet. 110,000 feet, and told me to kick it over, pointed it straight down, and throw in the afterburner. Now they had three speedometers on the plane to see how fast they were going to go. And they were going straight down, the afterburners in, trying to take the record away from Chuck Yeager, 1,380-some miles an hour. And two of the speedometers showed that they'd taken the record, but the third one didn't come up, and they were beating on it, trying to get it to react. And in the meantime, they were going straight down at 1,300 miles an hour. And I said, when did you decide to pull out? He said, well, we was about 9,000 feet from the ground. And I said, when you pulled out? He said, yeah. But he said the third speedometer came up, showed that they'd taken the record, and they took a picture and pulled it out. I said, how much longer could you stay to the dive and not got out? 4 or 5 seconds. He would have been in the ground. But they got the speed record. And he's in the book of Guidance, holding the speed record for 3 days. Chuck Yeager got mad and went up to the back. The other thing that probably you didn't know was Glenn trained to be an astronaut. He was in training at Edwards Air Force Base to be an astronaut. And I was down there building the facility that all the astronauts trained in to go to the moon. And they found out even in Glenn's kidneys and threw him out of the program and took a guy by the name of White. White came down behind the moon very well at the Space Center. And him and Gus Grissom got in a missile ready to go to space. And somebody had left an oily rag in the oxygen stream. And the minute that oxygen hit that oily rag, it burst into flames. And burnt those guys, the second breath they took, it burnt their lungs out. So White and Gus Grissom was killed in Florida on that space, getting ready to go to space. Could have been planned. but they saved him to do more important things. Anyhow, I thought you'd like to know some of those things.
You have not dreamed of and wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence, hovering there. I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the wind-swept heights with easy grace, where never lark or eagle flew. And while with silent lifting mind I've trod the high untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God. We will have time for more sharing refreshments downstairs after the service. I'd just like to close this part out now by asking you to join me in a moment of prayer. O God of grace, heart of compassion, infinite spirit of life, we ask for the presence of the Spirit that touched the life of Glenn Hendrickson to touch us all, as we remember the man who lived in and loved the world in all its beauty and harshness, who cared for us and loved us, who wondered with us and laughed with us, and who will always be there for us, even after his passing. Let us feel and know the energy and spirit with which he lived. And may we all find strength and solace remembering the blessing of his life to us and to this world. I invite all now to join me in the words of the prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Thank you all for coming. We're invited downstairs for refreshments and further to tell the stories and enjoy each other's presence as Clement wants us to do.